One of the things I started doing, because I'm at a desk a lot, so it's good to get my body moving, I put on Qigong or Tai Chi videos that are 5 minutes long, and I'm ready for a break. My brain's dead, and I'm tired, and I need to get my watch is telling me to get moving. And I spent 5 minutes doing, a little bit of Qigong in my office, and all of a sudden I feel energized,
Mm.
calmer, my brain's clearer, it like helps drain whatever waste products I have in my brain that, while I'm like this on the computer. Little things like that are restful, that are just easy the more you can incorporate little things like that to just bring it down, so that, because otherwise it just climbs throughout the day.
Hello, this is Anthony Effinger. I'm the host of the Think Neuro podcast from Pacific Neuroscience Institute. And today I'm talking with Dr. Jennifer Brayman. She's the head of neuroimaging for research at PNI. And we have a great topic today. We are going to talk about the brain-gut connection. Thanks for coming on again, Dr. Brayman.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a little while since we've had you on, and you have had a promotion since then. Tell us about that.
I have a promotion, and I now get to try to not only do research, but try to plan some of our bigger strategies and how we're going to plan our research going forward, especially related to neuroimaging. So it's an exciting new chapter in my career.
So what does a typical day look like for you?
Probably a typical day looks like some combination of writing papers, writing grants, being in meetings, like leadership meetings, being in mentorship meetings, being, I think like a normal science job, but with definitely a lot more time spent on fundraising, I would say. That's probably a bigger part of it than it was before.
But is your job, I mean, are you solely research? Do you see patients at all?
I am solely research. If I see it's in context for research. So maybe I'm an investigator on a study and a patient has questions or needs help with something, I might talk to them in that context, but mostly I handle the data for the studies. I plan studies. I write about results from studies. I analyze data from studies. I supervise my team, who also analyze data and write papers. And I work with the other faculty at PNI, so all of my research is really inspired by all of the work of the clinician scientists at PNI, but they're full-time clinicians, so having researchers like me that are just fully dedicated to the sorts of questions they have is really important. Only so much.
Yeah, totally. And I think lately we've been talking more about practitioners and their work, so it's interesting to, this is a side of PNI that needs to be highlighted, and you guys are doing a lot of research. I mean, it's a research institution.
It is. We actually are doing, we have a sort of semi-academics, we call it privatemia model, where it's semi-private but also semi-academic. We are trying to, they do a lot of clinical trials work, but they also do some investigator-initiated studies. And we also, one of my roles is I actually we utilize a lot of the clinic data itself to answer research questions. A lot of the work I do is on how, and this actually leads into why I'm interested in the microbiome or like the gut in general. So a lot of what we look at both in our experimental research, we have a clinical trial about how multiple lifestyle modalities, like helping people through lifestyle change in multiple areas, helps them with their cognitive impairment. And the reason why you do multiple things is because it affects multiple organ systems. I also do work on how medical management for multiple organ systems affects brain health. And I think, systems biology, where you're not just looking at one system, the brain by itself, but instead looking at how the gut interacts with the brain, how the gut interacts with the heart, which interacts with the brain. Those things are becoming increasingly important in how we understand diseases. And that's a lot of the interest that we have, is really how do we improve medical management and lifestyle, or really, when I say medical management, you might, instead of directly treating the brain, you might really want to treat somebody's kidney health or somebody's gut health, because those things are down the road going to help you with your brain. And actually sometimes going head on with brain stuff is tough, but it might not be that hard to like some of the things that, like, we're going to talk about the gut, and some of it will seem like a lot of information, but what I'm going to tell you is a lot of tips that probably aren't that hard, where you can actually really affect your brain inflammation.
Yeah. Well, if you read the New York Times these days, I mean, you read so much about the microbiome. And there's lots of products now that people talk about being beneficial. And that's one side of it. The other side is clearly there's this connection that, probably people in your position knew about long before the rest of us. So let's talk about, when did this kind of brain gut connection start to become so apparent and so important?
I feel like I started learning about it a lot more. It in probably the early, like the 2000s, like the early, I think that that's when this was started, and that it might have been even in the 90s, but that just wasn't quite on my radar. And that's really accelerated over time, especially as we've gotten so much better at understanding, the sort of molecular biology of the gut microbiome. But even before then, we were starting to make a lot of inroads. There's a lot of ways where these two things interact, and I think people kind of colloquially know that. Everybody, says, think, people like kind of think with their gut. They're like, oh, they like, you like pat your tummy when you're like going with my instincts, right? And the truth is, that part of your body actually has something called we call it the second brain, the enteric nervous system. And it has a lot of the same neurotransmitter, actually it produces a lot of the neurotransmitters that are part of your nervous system. And it has a huge impact on not only digestion, and it has a lot of autonomy in and of itself, but it has a really huge impact on the mood of your brain and how your brain functions. And it really is important to understand this connection, because it really, it's not like a minor way. It doesn't have a minor interaction. It has a very direct and very important and robust interaction with your brain.
So you called that the enteric nervous system.
Right.
Okay, so is this describe that? Is it like a network of neurons in your stomach, or where is it?
So, right. So the gut is sort of I think I'll talk about your stomach kind of separately. Not that it's not like your gut, really, your gastrointestinal system is like your liver, your gallbladder, your stomach, and your intestines. But I think I'm going to be focusing, especially because I want to get to the microbiome, I'm going to be focusing on intestines. And I'll tell you when I say gut, that's probably like a little bit more what I'm thinking about. That's just for this talk. That's not necessary. Sure. But so throughout your gut and even around your stomach, there is an entire nervous system that produces neurotransmitters like serotonin. In fact, 90% of the serotonin that you make comes from this nervous system.
And that's a huge marquee kind of neurotransmitter that does lots of important things.
Modulates a lot, and it's really important in mood regulation. So it's sort of famous for, like, if you look at SSRIs, those are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So that kind of demonstrates that when you want to elevate somebody's mood, you want more serotonin, for example. So the serotonin production of your gut does have an effect on the mood of your brain. It produces other things like GABA and, pretty much you name it. So there's the enteric nervous system. It's sort of a second brain, and it has a lot of autonomy, but then it interacts with your brain. Your brain has effects on the gut. So have you heard of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems?
Yeah, but can you give us the quick description for the folks here?
So the parasympathetic nervous system is sort of like your rest and digest system. That's what we're going to call it. Rest and digest. And it's responsible for really enhancing like peristalsis, the moving of digestion. It increases the amount of digestion enzymes you make. It increases stomach emptying. And it just, in general, when you're more relaxed, it will enhance the actions of the enteric nervous system. You might hear about the vagal nerve. It sort of surrounds, it's one of the cranial nerves. It surrounds your entire, including the stomach, all of it, everything. It innervates it directly. So the sympathetic nervous system is pretty famous. It might be the most famous. And that's your fight or flight. So that's sort of the famous analogy is when you're running from the lion, you're the caveman, you're running from the lion. You don't care about digesting in that moment. You're like, stop digesting. please give me all my blood in my muscles. I need to run, because I'm trying not to die from this lion. In the modern world, though, your sympathetic nervous system is kind of chronically activated. I know that I get all stressed knowing that I'm like preparing for a meeting, or I just had a stressful meeting, or I have a deadline, and and then here comes lunch, right? Right, and then you have to eat lunch. So the thing is, stress suppresses the sympathetic nervous system, actively suppresses the parasympathetic nervous system, and stress does a lot of things to your digestion. Not only does it kind of halt it, which can cause all kinds of things like maybe like IBS symptoms, for example. There's like all kinds of disorders of the gut that being stressed while trying to digest will like enhance. Stress just makes everything worse. That's just sort of chronic stress makes everything worse. So the other thing it does, a lot of people don't know this, is there's something called intestinal permeability. So mostly you want your intestines to bring in good things and leave bad things to be excreted. So what happens when you have stress and also pain is you actually get higher intestinal permeability. So your intestines let things in to your bloodstream that it should not. You've probably heard of this. It's all over the internet. They call it leaky gut.
Oh boy. Yeah, I have heard that term.
So stress will increase the amount of things leaking into your blood system. That can cause, really frustrating things like joint pain. It can definitely impact immune function, but and systemic inflammation. But importantly, it does affect like the inflammation in your brain. So because you end up with things that are getting into your bloodstream that really aren't very beneficial for you. So
there's a link between stress and inflammation of your brain through this process.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. Okay, go on.
I think so I'm not trying to scare everybody. I feel like this is one of those things that we know is happening. It's, we just kind of in our culture go about our daily life not understanding the importance of it. But there are simple things you can really do to make this a little easier. And I'm going to just say one, and I do this now. I used to just eat at my desk, and turn off my camera, scarf in the meeting, chew really fast. I was really guilty of that. And I ended up with a lot of digestive issues, and it's no joke. Like, you really should work on that. And the thing is, it's like so easy to just pause. There's a few things you can do there's one thing you can do to engage your parasympathetic nervous system and suppress your sympathetic nervous system. It takes like a minute or two. Breathing exercises. So before I eat, especially lunch, this is my most stressful meal. I'm always busy. I'm always running to the next thing. I stop. So you take a deep breath, not even that deep. It's called box breathing. You just go in for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, out for a 4 count, hold out for a 4 count. So you just breathe in like a square, and it'll kind of shut off your mind, which is churning out. It's like your mind is pretending like it's the lion. It's putting that lion, like that lion is coming for me if I don't get these notes right for right. It's like manifesting this lion, and it's so if you have it counting and controlling your breath, it sort of shuts up and it stops like putting the lion in front of you. But the other thing it does is your parasympathetic nervous system knows it's okay to come online if you're breathing slowly. And especially if you breathe like a little, instead of into your chest, if you're breathing into your gut, if you breathe down into your gut, it'll bring on, and that takes like a minute or two. Everybody thinks I don't have time. Like, you probably have 2 minutes.
So this is, again, you're shutting down the sympathetic nervous system to get the parasympathetic nervous system working so you can digest food.
Correct.
That's it.
That's it. And then pay attention to your food for the 10, 15 minutes you're eating. Don't do anything that's going to add stress.
Okay. So this is I often think of I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but, French people don't eat while they're driving. They don't eat at the desk. They go and they actually sit and, kind of have respect for the food and, give it time. So maybe we need to be doing this.
If you go to France, they don't have weight problems and their health is far better. They're more long-lived. For all of the bad rap they have for eating and drinking a lot. They actually don't eat tons of food. They eat a lot of healthy food, and also they do relax, and they do give digestion its due. And I do think that that's a really big part of their longevity.
So it strikes me that the worst possible thing you could do is eat like a fast food meal in traffic. From a drive, I mean, right? I mean, that's got to be like your sympathetic nervous system's, amped, and
Yeah.
you're trying to digest. You know what I mean? It just sounds terrible.
Please don't do that or eat liquid foods that you don't have to digest as much. But don't do that. Don't do that. Listen to an audiobook or call a friend. Do something
Yeah.
with traffic.
Yeah. So is this, the people talk about when they stand up to give a speech or something, they get jitters in their stomachs and things like that. Is that are we talking about the same thing here, the mind gut connection?
You have your enteric nervous system, which controls your gut, just sort of it's chugging along. And then you have your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And they're like these levers your brain has on a lot of your systems. It's not just your gut, but when you're more relaxed, you have a more relaxed gut that's doing its job. It's constantly kind of doing something to clear out, what you've eaten last. And then you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is telling it to stop because you need to, do this really important thing right now. And it's okay that sometimes your sympathetic nervous system is engaged, but I do think it's important to know that there are tools to bring that down and not to let it be chronic. And also that at times when you're eating, I think I have a good analogy. When you eat a meal and you're not supposed to swim for 30 minutes because you'll cramp and sink, that's just a good, honestly, that's just a good, for life. Give it 30 minutes.
So give it 30 minutes for all activities, maybe? Is that what you're saying? Not just swimming?
I mean, for things that are going to stress you out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Read a book or, I feel like even with my work, I always have more stressful and less stressful tasks. So you can usually, when you're done with your meal, if you can, and you can't always, but this is aim to, right? Not always in control of your destiny in these ways, but often you could say, well, right after lunch, I could work on thing A or B. Thing B is maybe a little bit like maybe I'm doing some research on something and it's just not that stressful versus, trying to prepare for a really intense deadline or something that I'm stressed out about or something very hard. Does that make sense?
Totally. I know you mentioned you had some stomach issues. Has this helped you get your issues under control? And do you know about others? I mean, is there research on this?
There's a huge amount of research on the effect of stress on all kinds of things. So yes, I think this is yes, I'll give you one example. There's a disorder called gastroparesis that can happen because a nerve is bruised because of surgery. It can happen with diabetes. It can happen if you have a viral infection, like some people with long COVID are having digestive issues for this reason. And that's specifically that the parasympathetic, the vagal nerve is damaged for one of these reasons. And it just means all of your gut is slower. I think people with Parkinson's disease have a lot of this, just like a more frozen gut. So stress is going to just make that worse, right? So things that can stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system is going to help you manage that disorder. And that disorder can lead to things like small intestine bacterial overgrowth, which is called SIBO. And that can affect your cardiac health, your metabolism.
Oh my.
Just whole scale inflammation. And through all of these brain health, right? So these are, but yes, it's like a way of managing it is to make sure, well, you're eating smaller meals, but in this particular case, but also that when you are eating, you're trying as hard as you can to be calm, to just for those moments.
And this condition results because things are not moving at the correct pace through your system.
Right.
Because the parasympathetic nervous system isn't functioning quite right.
Right. So if your stomach doesn't empty quickly enough, say food is stuck in your stomach for a long time because you're very stressed out or because you have damaged your parasympathetic nervous system, you can end up with food fermenting in your stomach. And that will bring microbes into your small intestine, which is not supposed to have any. That's not supposed to have a gut microbiome. So then you can end up with a lot of health problems. This is
Oh,
just an example.
yeah, no, certainly.
It's more, and not everybody's going to get SIBO,
No,
but
of course, no, but that's fascinating. So let's talk about the gut microbiome because we hear a lot about this now about how this is a huge determinant of mood and brain function. What is the connection? And
so
let me step back. What is the gut microbiome, first of all?
so the gut microbiome is trillions of small cells that are living inside of your intestines. They are bacteria, they are viruses, they are yeast, they are funguses, and they all work together, some beneficially and some less beneficially to, I mean, let's be honest, like we're talking trillions, and if you have a diverse gut, like you have more genetic material in your intestines than you have in the rest of your body. You actually have a very small amount of genes. Most of your genes are actually in your gut. Isn't that crazy? By a
Yeah,
lot.
we're not alone.
You're not alone. Um, I always used to joke that sometimes, like psychologically, you kind of feel like there's a little circus going on in there. And then when I think about this, I was like, I wonder if this is where the circus is coming from. I don't know. Um, no, that's just a joke. But
Yeah.
I, I, I like many of them, like the good ones. I'm going to talk about them first, the really friendly ones. So they are the ones you get from eating yogurt and that you get from eating a diverse plants, seeds, nuts, some fruits. Like those things give you like gut diversity, and they come in. They help you digest food. They, for example, make short chain fatty acids that improve the immune system. They reduce inflammation. They feed your brain. They're just generally very helpful. Like there's lots of things we can't digest on their own, and they can digest them and in a way that's very beneficial. They signal, they themselves, I told you, I don't think I did the enterics. So the second brain has its own signaling to the brain and secretes things into the bloodstream that also affects the brain. But so does the microbiome. Like these bacteria, for example, all of them, they can pump out neurotransmitters. They can pump out inflammation. They can reduce inflammation depending on what they are. Yeah, they're really important. And the fostering of good ones actually reduces the bad ones. I mean, the bad ones can pump out things that create cancer and things that create inflammation. They can pump out things that give you bad moods. Like they really can have a negative effect on your mood, your cognition, your long-term brain health. They can, for example, red meat, one of the mechanisms where it's problematic for you is that it actually it feeds bacteria that pump out cytokines that actually negatively affect your cardiovascular system. So it's not just the saturated fats that are the problem. It's the microbes that are really getting you there. So one thing that you can do is the more you have beneficial bacteria, the less the bad ones can exist, right? I mean, because
do they outcompete the bad ones?
They do. There's just only so much room in there. And so, the more you're eating something probiotic like cultured, like kefir, yogurt, buttermilk, like these cultured foods. And in truth, most of the like plants that we're taught that you can eat out there, they usually have some microbes on them themselves. And then also they feed them. So if you have any in your stomach, those populations will go up.
Feed
So
the good ones.
The good ones. So the more you're feeding the good ones, the more you have good ones, the more you're repopulating with good ones, the more diversity you have of good ones, the less the bad ones can have a negative effect on you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So what springs to mind here is the Mediterranean diet.
Yes, definitely. I think the Mediterranean diet is well respected in all communities. I think everybody knows that that's an excellent diet, and much of those foods are prebiotic.
Prebiotic is the term you're using?
Right. So the foods that feed your gut flora are called prebiotic. The foods that contain gut flora are probiotic.
Oh, terrific. Okay, great. So give us some prebiotic foods.
Kiwis, bananas, especially green bananas.
Really? Just because
You know, so
there's something.
so some of them have this gets in the weeds. Some of these are filled with indigestible fibers that we can't digest, but that bacteria eat, like fructans or fructose or mannose, like sorbitol. Like these are
Okay, okay.
so like things like corn or avocado, those have sorbitol in them, and that feeds the bacteria that likes to eat sorbitol. So you end up with more of those living around, and then they're breaking down some sorbitol for you. And
Even though we can't break it down, they can.
right.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's any number of these indigestible fibers that bacteria feed on, but we can't eat, and they really improve our nutrients, like what we can pull from our food. And they, you know how I talked to you about leaky gut? They also line your gut, like they line your intestines, and they provide a really important barrier between your, like what you're excreting and your bloodstream, so that it's not just your intestines. Like you should have also a really thick layer of these
Mm.
microbes because it's just a thicker layer. It's like if I take a shower. So your intestines are made out of the same thing as your skin. They're epithelial cells. So if I
Okay.
take a shower and I strip away all of my oils in the shower with like a really harsh soap, and then I get out, I towel off, and I don't put any lotion on, it's like, right? And I can like
Yeah.
wash really easily. I think this is a good analogy. Like I think they're even more important than lotion. So I don't want to like, but it's like that. You want to make sure you have like a good coat of good bacteria so that you have an extra barrier between your intestines and its outside world, which is your bloodstream.
No, certainly. Is there truth to the idea that if you take antibiotics, you're going to wipe out some of your gut flora? And how serious is that?
The answer is yes. And it's pretty serious. One of the things you can do to keep a good microbiome is to try to avoid antibiotics when you don't need them. So if you have a virus and you don't have any secondary infections, you don't need an antibiotic. Don't take it just because it makes you feel like you're doing something. Take them when you need them. If you have a kidney infection, like if you have a UTI, like take the antibiotics. Don't let this, there are ways to recover your microbiome after antibiotics, but don't take it like lightly. Don't just take it just because you feel, don't have like a stack of amoxicillin laying around that you bought in Mexico that you're going to just pop every time you don't feel well. Like, please don't do that. Like, really make sure you have something bacterial. Like, if you have a throat infection, go get it cultured, make sure it's bacterial, before you actually take anything. And the reason is it does, they don't discern very well. They kill the good and the bad. And some of them are more harsh on your stomach, on your gut than the other ones.
I believe it.
So what do you do when that happens?
Yeah.
There's actually people are like, to this day, there's a lot of literature on probiotics and going both directions and whether you take them or not. And that's kind of that's a way, like, so a lot of people would recommend that you take probiotics immediately after for at least a couple of weeks. I'll tell you some downsides to probiotics though, and that is because they don't have a diverse colony, so you could end up with very low diversity, and diversity is very important. And they can get very well established and make it really hard for other
Oh,
good
interesting.
flora to
So you have like a monoculture of.
right. You get a very heterogeneous
Yeah.
culture. But the one thing about taking probiotics that could be helpful is it could keep things from candida from taking root, like funguses. So there's a lot of debate about this, and I will be honest, I don't know the right answer to this. I think the best thing you can do is after you are done with antibiotics, and this isn't to say you shouldn't take some probiotics for a couple of weeks. I'm not saying that, but very importantly, eat probiotic foods like yogurt, and eat a lot of different seeds, a lot of different nuts, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Stay away from red meat. Stay away from fermented foods because those are sort of wild cards, like for maybe a couple weeks. Just stay away from those until you've got a good colony.
Fermented foods, you said.
So fermented foods are different than cultured foods. Fermented foods are like sauerkraut or half sour pickles, for example, kimchi. Those are great. Those are really great for your gut health. Diversity is everything, and they can help you break down those things. Um, some of those foods that break down, remember those indigestible fibers, some of
Yeah.
them are better tolerated than others. So some might cause more bloat or a little more discomfort than others. And it's, and again, this is a really active area of research. I just want to make this really clear. Like in 5 years, like some of this advice could really change. We're really studying this right now. Well, I'm not personally studying this, but we as a
No, there's
scientist.
an explosion of research here, right? I mean, this connection is just incredible.
Yeah, and it's so right now, some studies suggest that for a couple of weeks you might want to hang tight on the sort of wild ones just because you don't want to like the I think big picture, when you've come off antibiotics, you're in a position you probably have some negative things like candida in there.
Mm.
Like get like yeast infections or like oral thrush where you get like pain in your mouth because you've lost a lot of your bacteria and now the other things are kind of growing out of control. So you want to replace the bacteria quickly to get that restored. You want to take that time to really get a good colony going. You want to make sure you've established really good, friendly, well tolerated bacteria that will be like the foundation of this new civilization living in your. And then once you have like that kind of ticking around, you can like bring in all kinds of folks, um, all kinds of villagers,
It really is something you have to cultivate.
like a garden. You should think of
It's
it
like
as
a garden, right?
a garden.
I'm tempted one wonders why, evolutionarily there would be this connection between the gut and the brain. I mean, is that worth asking? I mean, what does it do for us?
We have a symbiotic relationship. What it seems like is it's a complicated symbiotic relationship. There's some evidence that the things in your gut can drive what you seek out, you
Hmm.
know, eating. I mean, a huge amount of, just remember until now, till very recently, most of what we did with our life was try to eat.
Yeah.
So, they have a stake in the game, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Stake in the game. There is some reason for them to signal to you because they have a stake in the game. And also, yeah.
To signal to us to do things that are right. It's a symbiotic relationship. It helps them if we, right, seek out things that they can eat.
And if we do better so that we can do that well.
Right. That is
That's
fascinating.
like that would be
Theory.
a theory. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's so interesting. So what other do you have other tips that you recommend? The breathing before meals is a great one. Some of the foods you mentioned. I mean, is this something where like say meditation, that sort of thing?
Anything you can do to handle your chronic stress is important. More important than I feel like everybody hears it and they're like, at this point, they're like, I'm so sick of hearing this. But the reality is it doesn't have to be, you know what? I think one of the things is it always feels like, oh, I have to spend like 4 hours in the morning meditating. I don't have time for that. But really, if you could take moments throughout your day to just calm yourself, like one of the things I've started doing, because I'm at a desk a lot, so it's good to get my body moving. And I don't really always have time or like the right shoes to go for a walk everywhere, right? So I put on Qigong or Tai Chi videos that are 5 minutes long, and I'm ready for a break. My brain's dead, and I'm tired, and I need to get my watch is telling me to get moving, and I'm stressed. And I spent 5 minutes doing, a little bit of Qigong in my office, and all of a sudden I feel energized,
Mm.
calmer, my brain's clearer, it like helps drain whatever waste products I have in my brain that, well, I'm like this on the computer. So, I mean, like little things like that are restful, that are just easy the more you can incorporate little things like that to just bring it down so that, because otherwise it just climbs throughout the day. So just keeping an eye on it and being like, I'm getting stressed, I'm going to I'll walk around the block. I have like a tight jaw. So I do these like jaw Tai Chi exercises, just stopping for a minute to do something that gets you out of your head, breathe slowly, just do that. And, I think things that are like a couple of minutes at a time that make you kind of feel better immediately are a lot easier to do.
So you're saying you don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours in the middle of the day.
Right. I mean, you should work out too. That's also really good for your gut health.
Absolutely. but
You should
it's
be talking, right. You don't have to like go take a lunch break gym thing and make it a big thing to be able to, I mean, you should be working out regularly. You really should. And that's really,
no, absolutely.
I can't speak for other people in this. I mean, I kind of read the attitudes on, like I read a lot of Reddit, but I will also say, like, for me, I was starting to tend to feel like the only time I could meditate was to do like some long, hour-long meditation. It was about trying to become like a monk. It can get really boring. And I'm not saying I don't ever meditate, but I'm saying that in addition to like that it doesn't have to be like that. It can also just be that for a few minutes here and there, you do little things, and it could be things that get your body moving that kind of clear a lot of things. They like help your neck, they help your head, they bring down your stress, they make your body feel better. Like some of my Qigong stuff, you're just shaking it out, and it just also just relaxes you, right?
Completely.
All that at once in 5 minutes. So gut disorders. Remember I told you if you have pain that you get things in your bloodstream, you get leaky gut.
Yeah.
Remember, if you have intestinal pain, a lot of people are like, I could tough that out. It's no big deal. Yes, it feels like somebody's stabbing me in the gut, but that's just normal. Or, you're getting heartburn. You think it's no big deal. That's just normal. I'm going to pop some Tums. Or you're not going regularly, or you're going way too much. Like all of these things are signs that there's something going on with your gut. And one thing I will say is, when you have pain and discomfort in your gut, you're going to have high intestinal permeability. You also get signaling to your brain, which causes more stress, which causes your gut to get worse. You end up with like meditation really does help with IBS. It's not that there's not something wrong in your gut. It's just that once there's something wrong with your gut, it signals to your brain with those, with stress stuff, and then your brain signals back, I'm stressed, and it's just this feedback loop, right? So if you're having GI stuff, whatever, if you had like a meal and it didn't agree with you, that's not what I mean. But like, if you have like something that's going on for months or maybe your lifetime and you don't even know it's not normal, seek somebody out. Go, we have like P&I, for example, has a really great health coaching program, and seek out a health coach, seek out a dietitian, and if it doesn't work and they can't get a handle on it, see a doctor. You might have a real issue. Maybe you have a bad bacteria in your colony. Maybe you have H. pylori, that's an infection in your stomach, and that can cause reflux. Or maybe you have that lazy gut thing I was telling you about, gastroparesis, and you're getting fermented foods and you're getting SIBO, or there's any number of things that could go wrong, but I think it's really easy to tough that stuff out and ignore it for some people, especially if it's not that severe. And I would say that it's often a sign that your gut health isn't good. And as we've seen, it affects your cardiovascular system, your immune system, systemic inflammation, brain inflammation.
Oh.
Your immune system affects your brain too. All of these can affect whether or not you kind of have a leak. The blood-brain barrier is affected by these things too. And that's like whether things that should stay out of the brain get into the brain. So like, I think it's very easy to just say it's not that important, but really if you have issues, even if they're like, it's not a big deal, you just need to change your diet a little, it might be a big deal. Like just go see somebody to find out, do it with lifestyle. And if not, see a doctor, because it's just worth fixing it or managing it and knowing what it is and how to manage it, because it does have a huge, like I said, it's your center.
Yeah, completely.
This system is your entire center, and like from it comes, so much of your whole systemic health.
Oh, absolutely. So, okay, so those are some of the conditions that are affected here or are caused here. What can we say about meal frequency based on that?
So there are a lot of different theories on this. Let's talk about the French. So we were just talking about, they believe that you eat 3 times a day, you digest while you're doing it, you eat enough that you're not going to be starving, or you'll be maybe a little hungry for your next meal, and you don't snack in the middle, and you have really strong.
They're not snackers.
Not snackers. When you have food intolerances, right? So maybe you can only eat so much of these fruit tins I was telling you about, or fructose, or so much D-mannose, maybe like, if you don't snack in between, you're just keeping it to meals, you can probably handle, and you're eating small meals, you can probably handle digesting those things better. Some people have issues with their stomach though, and they just can't eat a large meal without getting pretty sick, right? So some people have to eat meals 6 times a day. Like if you have what I was saying, like gastroparesis or like SIBO, they recommend you eat 6 times a day, tiny meals. So I think there's a big spectrum in between. Um, if you're managing your weight, you might want to eat fewer meals, like maybe 2 meals and a snack
Mm,
and
okay.
snacking. So some of it really depends on your other things. Um, some people just snack and don't have big meals. Some people,
So it's a personal thing. There's no,
I
you
don't
know,
think there's one answer. I do. I really, I think that this is where personalized medicine comes into play. So many different people thrive on so many different ways of eating.
yeah. When you mention red meat, it's such a foundation of the American diet. It's a little worrisome. Uh,
Yeah. I
I
think a lot
mean,
of people don't know how to make delicious other foods is the problem. It's very easy to have a delicious steak and it's so tempting.
totally. I
People are so
mean, yeah,
it's just delicious and it's amazing and it like makes that like beast inside of you really happy. That just
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's me, and many times. But yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. And what do we do about that? I mean,
I have learned to make some of the most amazing chicken recipes that you can imagine and fish recipes. And I put a lot of flavor in things. For me, that really helps. So I take the skin off of like thighs and I do like, I'll give you an example. Like I really love, um, there's a marinade for roadside, like Mexican roadside chicken. It's so flavorful. It takes me a few minutes to make
hmm,
while I'm grilling my chicken. You just baste it on. You don't even have to do it in advance. I'll also put the other thing I do is more Mediterranean is a more Mediterranean dish. I take saffron, grind it up, put some lemon juice, a little bit of olive oil or garlic oil. I like garlic oil these days.
hmm,
I baste it while I'm cooking it. It's so flavorful. I think that's a lot of it is, a lot of
right.
chicken is boring. But if you make it exciting and it tastes different all the time and it's not that hard, I think that's the other thing. It can't be that difficult. One of the problems is a steak is easy. So you have to find ways that it's not that hard. And none of those things that I just said, they're things you can do in like 5 minutes.
Can I ask you what you put in the marinade for the Mexican roadside chicken?
Let me look it up in the cookbook app.
I think people are going to wonder about that. So I mean, so what your point is chicken's a great protein.
Salmon's a great protein.
Salmon's a great protein.
So I last night I made salmon. I put mustard, cilantro. So it was like Dijon mustard, cilantro, a little bit of garlic oil, salt and pepper. I like slathered it all over. I baked it, and it was just amazing. It just because it has flavor. Most of
Yeah.
the time at a restaurant you get salmon, it's like dollars on that. It doesn't taste like anything. But yeah.
Should we talk about vegetarianism and veganism and what that does to your gut biome?
Sure. I've been really into Walter Longo's book, The Longevity Diet. And I don't eat like that constantly, but I have incorporated because I also like chicken and that's not in the diet. Um, but I actually have a lot of days where I'm eating a vegan diet, like a whole food vegan diet, because I want to cultivate a good
But
microbiome.
by Whole Foods, you don't mean the chain, you mean
Oh, right, right, right. No, I mean like nothing processed. Like I'm
right,
making
whole foods.
right, all
Right.
like nothing out of a bag.
Right. And who did you say? Say the name of the writer again in the book.
Walter Longo wrote a book called The Longevity Diet,
Okay.
and he's a longevity expert. He's the head of the Longevity Institute at USC, and he's done research on rodents and on humans, and his work is very well validated. Um, and he talks a lot about a lot of the benefits of eating various different foods, and also how much I think like he also has something called the fast mimicking diet where you can actually eat while getting a lot of the benefits of a fast. So
Uh,
so those things all really help your microbiome. So the way I kind of think of it is I like to take a couple of days a week where that's just how I eat. I eat a calorie restricted diet. I don't eat any protein. I just eat, it's like under 10% protein. I eat a lot of nuts and seeds, olives. I eat a lot of vegetables, some fruit. I think that it's, about 9% protein and then half and half fat and carbs. And,
Hmm.
I try to, like, I like to do under 600 calories. Sometimes it's 900, but it doesn't really matter. It's a day where you really give yourself a break. You can get the benefits of autophagy over time. Like if
What
you
is that?
when you fast, when you get good sleep, when you do cardiovascular activity, you can give your body a break so that it can do a process, an important process for aging called autophagy. Autophagy is, when over time, the parts of your cells just don't work very well. And some
Hmm.
of the cells just don't work at all, but they clutter up your body. They just stay there and clutter up your body. And it over time gets worse. You clear this out less and less as you get older. Um, so autophagy is the process of actually clearing all that stuff out. It's like doing your oil change and getting your filters changed, getting those like old gross filters out. It helps with your energy metabolism, make you more energetic. It helps just repair all of your cells. And fasting can be really difficult. It's really hard to do, you know.
Yeah, no, it's can be very uncomfortable for yeah.
So you can do it. I mean, he recommends the 5 days, but there's also some that say you can calorie restrict like 2 days a week and get a lot of benefits. And um, the idea is giving yourself parts. Like, remember I said give your like you don't have to be like perfect all the time, but like giving yourself a break. Just like during the day, do some qigong for 5 minutes. Like during the week, just take a couple of days to charge your health battery. It's going to help your gut microbiome. It's going to help your cardiovascular system. It's going to help clear like inflammation out of your brain. It's going to help. It's going to help repair cells so that they actually produce better energy. It'll get rid of like there's like mitochondria. Maybe you've heard of those. They're the my undergrad bio class, they say they're the powerhouse of the cell. They're like your little batteries, right? So they break down and they need to be removed so that they can be replaced with ones that work. So if you're eating terribly all the time and
Hmm.
you're not break, oh, the worst is eating up until bed. Like if you eat right before bed, you know what? Honestly, I was really guilty about this. I'm the kind of person I wake up really early, I work out, then I work really late, I come home, I want to have dinner with my husband, and then I go to bed at 9:30. So how do you do all of that and have
Mhm.
3 hours before? But you should have 3 hours because if,
3
yeah,
before bed?
try at least two.
Yeah, we struggle with this. Why is that important?
So when you're
I've read
sleeping,
this is everywhere right now, and it's yeah, code red. Why is it so important?
so if you are metabolizing alcohol or digesting food right like while you're sleeping, you are not
Hmm.
getting rid of broken mitochondria. You are not getting rid of inflammation that's been built up in your brain. Your body is spending all that time on this really energetic thing, your digestion, and it
Yeah.
inhibits your ability to actually do housekeeping. So just imagine like you do that and then like you never take out the trash. Can you imagine what your house looks like if just the trash just keeps building up and building up? Like how nice is your house going to be to live in after a few years of that? Like never goes out to the dumpster, not once.
This is, I think since doing this podcast with P and I've developed a lot of really good habits. I will say this is one that is not good. We still eat too late. And I bet you a lot of people in this world do.
It's
Just because of our schedules. It's something you don't think about until you hear something like this.
I actually think about it all the time because we actually like this is something I've done a lot of research on, and even I struggled with it because I'm like, I'm not giving up dinner with my husband, period. So
Right.
now, like this, I'm struggling with this myself. This is something that I have struggled with a lot. Number one, if I want to have a late dinner, I don't like to stay up late on the weekends, but sometimes I might just on a Friday come home late and want to eat at 8. I might stay up an hour later just so that I can do that. That's one thing.
Okay.
I,
So stay up a little later. What about going for a walk?
these are the things that I've started doing. I have started. making sure, like if I'm working on site, and my husband's working at home, I'll like make sure he kind of knows what we're having and it's like in the works before I get home so that we're done eating by 7. That's our goal. Done eating by 7.
Okay. Okay.
If I know I'm stuck late, I might just have to give up dinner with my husband that night and eat, and then we just like do other things when
Sure.
hang out. And then we have the
Okay.
weekends a little bit. I know
Okay. Done by 7.
I'm done by 7. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's a mantra then.
Done by 7. It's
Again, because you need that time sleeping to take out the trash in your body, and that's not going to happen if you're digesting. That's it, right? Okay.
there's no way around that. You know what? I wish I could negotiate on this one. If I could negotiate one point, it would be this. I love staying up late and eating with my husband. It's like it's the best part of my day. Can't do it. Just can't.
Well, that's another great tip right there.
We might de-emphasize on a busy day. We might just de-emphasize our dinner that night. And on a lot of days, you find that if you really make it a priority, you actually can get through eating by 7 and it's not a big deal. And then you cut out a lot of late night snacking, which will probably just make your weight management easier.
What about the other end of the day? Is there a healthy time to eat breakfast, or is this a personal preference?
Not even a preference is the right word. I think people's physiologies are all really different.
Yeah.
I personally, like a lot of people fast. They do like it's not fasting. It's really like a short eating window. You know, I find that I do better if that is shortened by eating earlier at night and then stopping and sleeping and then getting my workout and then I eat after my workout. If I don't eat in the morning, and some people who kind of run, I'm like a pretty upbeat person, but that also means that I can also get really stressed out. I'm like that close to being too stressed. If you don't eat in the morning, your stress hormones climb.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now some people that's fine. It makes them more awake because they maybe have really low cortisol. But if you're somebody that kind of runs a little higher, like I do, like it's good. I'm peppy, but then but then I can go over to a point where suddenly my cortisol levels going up is like making me worse. I'm more stressed. My sympathetic nervous system's kicking in.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
For me, if I skip breakfast, that's what happens to me. But I know a lot of people that are more chill, that aren't that stressed, and they're like, "This is great. I have way more energy." Probably because their stress hormone goes a little more. Like it's good to be a little stressed. You just don't want to be too stressed.
Yeah. That sounds like hangry.
I feel like scientists don't know what they're doing, but now I feel like it looks like I'm a dolphin or something. Of whether it's good for you or not. And this is so this is a plot of this is how much cortisol you have, and this is whether it's good. And it's like more like no cortisol is bad, more is better, and then you get to this point where more is not better, and then more is worse, makes you worse. And this is where a lot of us live.
Is a lots of cortisol.
Too much cortisol.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of us are living in America, at least. So so I eat, it doesn't have to be a lot. You can eat just like an egg white or something. I don't think it has to be big, but it's often good to put something in your stomach in the morning that'll keep that from happening. But I don't think it has to be a huge amount of food. And it can, you can probably postpone it to like 9 or 10. I don't know. Depends on, but I wouldn't, me personally. Now I know a lot of people that would die on that hill and argue to death with me though. So and I know that fasting has a lot of really great benefits. So this is one of those personal things you have to kind of check in with yourself. I think this is one of those, we are working on precision medicine and we are just starting to understand how personalized these choices really are. Everybody is a little bit of a unique snowflake in this way.
Well, and everybody's gut biome's got to be composed and slightly,
oh yeah.
Think about the variability there. My God.
Between diet and genetics, because you have some genetic predispositions and what will work in your gut, psoriasis. This is not really about your brain, but the people with psoriasis are way more likely to have a gut flora that secretes something called interleukin 17 that causes psoriasis. But that's genetic. I don't have.
Yeah. Right.
But I'll compete it with the good stuff. I'll compete your
You're going to have a lot to study here. I think you're you're not going to run out of things to look at. This is just,
No,
God, the possibilities are endless.
yeah, I'm just scratching the surface, I'll be honest.
Exactly.
I really feel like that's why so many of my answers are like, I can tell you what we think right now. Oh, it's so,
Certainly.
and there's people that for everything I'm telling you, there's like 5 different papers where they're like, well, maybe it's different. Like that's just where we're at right now. It's exciting.
It is. I mean, my mom's generation, I mean, my mother was one of those people who just would, any sign of illness, it was like antibiotics, right? They were a wonder drug. And, that was the time. And then all of a sudden you find out, my God, so it's great. It's terrific research. Well, thanks for coming on again. I think we got to keep up to speed on what you're doing here, and we got to keep talking about this.
Yeah, I'll definitely be, and also if the literature changes a lot, we can definitely.
Please.
And and I study a lot of different organ systems as part of my work here at PNI, and so there's always other things that we can talk about.
Yeah, come back. No, we love it. This is a great topic, and it's one that affects all of us, and one where as you point out, there's a lot we can do. There's a lot in our control here on this.
And you know what? The easy stuff. I think this is one of the things I want to say that's like start with the easy stuff. It's really not that hard to get some Greek yogurt. Ooh, yogurt sauces. Like it doesn't even have to be sweet yogurt.
Right. Yeah.
Like tahini and a little bit of garlic oil and salt, and it's like a great dip. It's a good, you can make onion dip with yogurt. You can make sauces instead of with cream. You can use yogurt. Like there's a million ways you can.
Potatoes.
Right. You can do it.
Burritos.
And you can, they even have cultured sour cream now. So
do that. Oh, there you go.
Sour cream now. So you can aim to incorporate live cultures into a serving of them in every day, and that's delicious and easy. They even have cultured cottage cheese now. So that's easy. Another thing that's really easy. I mean, most people probably are exercising anyway. And if you're not, you should be. It's really. You just go on the sidewalk and walk for 30 minutes, and that's going to help. Just that alone. Make a big
exercise comes up on this podcast all the time, and that's like that's a go-to. Exercise, sleep, good food.
It's like the answer to all things.
It is. Well, all right, we'll do this again. Dr. Brayman, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.